You know what's funny? Everyone has a plan to fix the Philippines. Every politician, every economist, every uncle at a family reunion who's had 3 beers. They all know exactly what we need to do. Build more infrastructure. Attract more foreign investment. Lower taxes. Raise taxes. Join this trade agreement. Leave that trade agreement. And the latest obsession? The one thing everyone suddenly agrees will transform us into the next economic powerhouse. Maharlika Investment Fund. But here's what keeps me up at night. What if we're all wrong? What if the thing everyone believes will make us rich is actually just another beautiful delusion? Another shiny promise that sounds perfect on paper but crumbles the moment it meets reality? I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to tell you a story. A story about hope, about money, about a country that's been waiting for its moment in the sun for generations. And about why sometimes the things that seem most obvious are the most dangerous. Let me take you back to where this all started for me. I was sitting in a coffee shop in Makati, scrolling through my phone, when I saw the news. The government had just approved the Maharlika Investment Fund. Billions of pesos. The narrative was intoxicating. Finally, the Philippines would have a sovereign wealth fund like Singapore, like Norway, like all those countries we look at with envy. We'd invest in infrastructure, in technology, in our future. We'd stop being the country that exports its best people and start being the country that builds empires. The comments section exploded with optimism. People were already imagining the Philippines in 20 years. Gleaming cities. Bullet trains connecting every island. A peso so strong you could vacation in Europe without wincing at the exchange rate. Finally, we were thinking big. Finally, we were playing the game the way the rich countries play it. And I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to believe it so badly. Because I'm tired. I'm tired of watching my friends leave for Dubai, for Canada, for anywhere that isn't here. I'm tired of the jokes about Filipino time and corruption and traffic that never ends. I'm tired of being the country with so much potential that never quite arrives. But then I started digging. And the more I dug, the more uncomfortable I became. Because here's the thing about economic miracles. They're never actually miracles. They're the result of specific conditions, specific choices, specific moments in history that align perfectly. And when you try to copy someone else's miracle without understanding why it worked, you don't get rich. You get something else entirely. Let me tell you about Norway. Everyone loves to bring up Norway when they talk about sovereign wealth funds. The Norwegian government pension fund Global is worth over $1 trillion. $1 trillion. It's the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. Norwegians are set for life. They found oil, they were smart about it, and now they're basically living in a socialist paradise where everyone cross-country skis and eats salmon and doesn't worry about retirement. And here's where it gets interesting. Because Singapore's success with Temasek didn't happen by accident. It happened because Singapore had something most countries don't have. An almost obsessive commitment to meritocracy and competence. When Singapore invests, politics doesn't enter the room. The best financial minds make decisions based purely on return on investment. There's no cousin of a senator getting a sweetheart deal. There's no pressure to invest in a province because it voted the right way. There's no corruption because the system simply doesn't tolerate it. Can we honestly say the same about the Philippines? And I'm not even being cynical here. I'm being realistic. We have brilliant people. We have talented economists and financial experts who could run circles around anyone in the region. But do they get to make the decisions? Or do the decisions get made in rooms where competence is just one factor among many others like loyalty, political debt, family connections? Now, before you click away thinking I'm just another pessimist who hates everything, hear me out. Because this is where the story gets really interesting. This is where I started asking a different question. Not whether the Maharlika Fund will work or fail, but why we're so desperate for it to work in the first place. Why do we keep looking for the one big solution? The magic bullet that will transform everything overnight? Why are we so convinced that if we just copy what the rich countries did, we'll become rich too? And that's when it hit me. We've been here before. Over and over and over again. Every decade, there's a new plan. A new strategy that everyone swears will finally be the one. In the 70s, it was import substitution. We'd build our own industries, stop depending on foreign goods, become self-sufficient. It didn't work. In the 80s, it was export-oriented manufacturing. We'd become the factory of Asia. It sort of worked, but not enough. In the 90s, it was business process outsourcing. We'd leverage our English skills and become the call center capital of the world. That actually worked pretty well, but it didn't make us rich. It made us employed. Every single time, we believed this was it. This was the thing that would change everything. And every single time, it helped. But it wasn't the miracle we were promised. So why would the Maharlika Fund be any different? Why would this be the exception to the pattern? Before I answer that, I need to tell you something personal. My mom, she doesn't think I can reach 5,000 subscribers on this channel. She keeps asking me when I'm going to get a real job, when I'm going to stop making videos about economics and politics and start doing something practical. And you know what? Maybe she's right to worry. Maybe this is just another dream that sounds better than it actually is. But here's the thing. I'm not making these videos to get rich. I'm making them because I think we deserve better than comfortable lies. We deserve the uncomfortable truth. And if you're still watching right now, if you've made it this far, I think you deserve that too. So do me a favor. If you appreciate someone actually trying to think critically about these things instead of just cheerleading or doomsaying, hit that subscribe button. Help me prove my mom wrong. Help me get to 5,000 people who care enough about our country to think deeply about it. Because that's how change actually happens. Not through magic funds or political promises, but through people who refuse to stop asking questions. All right, back to the story. Why do we keep falling for the same pattern? I think it's because we're asking the wrong question. We keep asking what will make us rich, when we should be asking why are we poor? And the answer to that second question is way more complicated and way less satisfying. We're not poor because we lack a sovereign wealth fund. We're not poor because we haven't found the right economic strategy. We're poor because of 1,000 small failures that compound over generations. We're poor because property rights are unclear and contracts aren't reliably enforced. We're poor because starting a business requires navigating a maze of permits and bureaucracy. We're poor because talent doesn't always rise to the top, because sometimes connections matter more than competence. We're poor because infrastructure projects take 3 times longer and cost twice as much as they should. We're poor because corruption isn't just a problem at the top. It's woven into the fabric of how things work at every level. These aren't exciting problems. You can't fix them with one bold policy. You can't solve them by copying Singapore or Norway. You fix them slowly, painfully, unglamorously, one reform at a time over decades. And nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to be told that the real path forward is boring and hard and might not pay off until their grandchildren are adults. A sovereign wealth fund is exciting. It's bold. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel like something big is happening. Like we're finally playing in the big leagues. And maybe it could work. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe we've finally built the institutions strong enough to handle it. Maybe the safeguards are sufficient. Maybe the people making the decisions will prioritize returns over politics. But here's what scares me. The cost of being wrong. If Norway's fund had failed, Norway would have been fine. They were already rich. They would have lost some oil money and moved on. If Singapore's investments had gone south, Singapore would have survived. They had other engines of growth. But if the Maharlika Fund fails, if billions of pesos disappear into bad investments or corruption or just mediocre returns, we don't have a cushion. We have people who need that money. We have hospitals that need equipment. We have schools that need teachers. We have infrastructure that's literally crumbling. The opportunity cost of this fund isn't just the money we might lose. It's everything we could have done with that money instead. Every road we didn't build. Every teacher we didn't hire. Every scholarship we didn't fund. And once that money is locked into long-term investments, it's gone. You can't get it back when you suddenly need it. I talked to an economist a few weeks ago. She told me something that stuck with me. She said, "Developing countries don't have the luxury of thinking 30 years ahead. We have urgent problems that need solutions now. Sovereign wealth funds are for countries that have already solved those problems." And I think she's right. This feels like we're trying to run before we can walk. We're trying to build a penthouse before we've finished the foundation. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Because maybe that's exactly wrong. Maybe the only way to ever build the foundation is to think like you already have it. Maybe the Philippines has been stuck in developing country mode for so long because we keep acting like developing countries. We think short-term. We prioritize immediate needs. We never invest in the future because the present is always on fire. And maybe, just maybe, acting like a developed country is how you become one. Maybe creating a sovereign wealth fund, even when we can't quite afford it, sends a signal. To investors, to our own people, to the world. The Philippines is serious now. We're not just muddling through anymore. We're building something that will outlast this administration and the next one and the one after that. We're planting trees whose shade we'll never sit in. And there's something beautiful about that. Something hopeful. We've been the pessimistic country for so long. The one that assumes everything will be corrupted, that every good idea will be ruined by politics, that we're just not capable of the kind of governance that makes nations great. What if we're wrong about that too? What if we're better than we think we are? What if this is the moment we finally surprise ourselves? I want that to be true. I want to be wrong about my concerns. I want the Maharlika Fund to be the success story that historians will point to 50 years from now and say, that's when everything changed. That's when the Philippines finally figured it out. I want my future kids to grow up in a country that works, where talent matters more than connections, where infrastructure is world-class, where nobody has to leave home to build a good life. But wanting something doesn't make it true. Hope isn't a strategy, and the most dangerous thing we can do is confuse optimism with wisdom. The world is littered with countries that tried to shortcut their way to prosperity, that borrowed someone else's playbook without understanding the game, that built impressive-looking structures on foundations of sand. So here's where we are. The Maharlika Fund exists. It's real. Billions of pesos are being invested as we speak. And now we wait. We watch. We hold our leaders accountable. We demand transparency. We insist on competence over politics. We make sure that if this thing fails, it fails because the market was unpredictable, not because someone's incompetent nephew was put in charge of Asia-Pacific investments. And maybe, if we do all that, if we actually build the institutions and safeguards and culture of excellence that makes these things work, maybe we'll look back on this moment as the beginning of something extraordinary. Or maybe we'll look back and realize we did it again. We fell for another beautiful story that promised more than it could deliver. I don't know which one it'll be. Nobody does. That's what makes this so terrifying and so exciting at the same time. We're writing this story right now. Every choice we make, every leader we elect, every time we demand better or accept good enough, we're deciding how this ends. The Philippines could be rich. We have everything we need. Natural resources, strategic location, young population, talent, ambition. We have all the ingredients. We've just never quite figured out the recipe. Maybe the Maharlika Fund is the missing piece. Or maybe it's another expensive distraction from the boring, unglamorous work of building a functioning state. Either way, we're about to find out. And honestly, I'm terrified, because I care too much about this country to pretend I'm not scared of what happens if we get this wrong. But I'm also still here, still making these videos, still believing that somewhere in the mess and complexity and uncertainty, there's a path forward. We just have to be brave enough to see it clearly, even when the truth is uncomfortable. So that's the story. That's the question everyone should be asking, but almost nobody is. Not, will the Maharlika Fund make us rich? But, are we ready for what it takes to make it work? And more importantly, what happens if we're not? I don't have the answer. But I know this, if we're going to bet our future on this, we better be honest about the stakes. We better build it right. And we better hold everyone involved accountable every single step of the way, because we don't get many chances like this, and we can't afford to waste another one. If you made it this far, thank you. Thank you for caring enough to think about this stuff. Thank you for not just accepting the easy narrative. We need more people who ask hard questions, who demand real answers, who refuse to let hope blind them to reality. That's how countries actually change, not through magic solutions, but through citizens who refuse to stop pushing for better. Hit that like button if this made you think. Subscribe if you want more honest conversations about where this country is headed, and drop a comment telling me what you think. Am I too pessimistic? Too optimistic? Am I missing something? Let's figure this out together. Because at the end of the day, it's not politicians or economists who will determine our future. It's us, all of us, deciding every day whether we're going to demand excellence or settle for whatever we're given. The Philippines deserves better than comfortable lies. And so do you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.